It is officially prediction season across the college football landscape, and on this show specifically, it's prediction week. Now, what does that all entail? It means we're giving you our predictions for the 2024 season. We're going to do it on Thursday where we tell you who we think is going to win the national championship, talking about who's winning every single conference, but we're also, leading up to Thursday, giving you our predictions for specific teams' overall records in 2024. Got a great slate lined up for you today. We got Oklahoma, we got Colorado, we got Florida, as well as a bunch of other teams tomorrow. But welcome into the Hard Count, man. It is Tuesday, July 30th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. Glad to have y'all riding along with us. As I mentioned, a bunch of predictions are on deck for you here on this very show, both today and throughout this week. But also, there's been a lot of other things going on throughout the college football landscape. Auburn, they had their Big Cat weekend, which is their massive recruiting weekend out there at Auburn, Alabama this past weekend. And Hugh Freeze, man, they are cooking. Tigers are booming right now on the recruiting trail. Currently, at the time of us being live, sit at the number 6 class in the On3 industry team recruiting rankings. And that's great. That's awesome to have a top 10 class in July, to flirt with the top 5 class in the summer. But what does it really mean for Auburn, and what does it really mean for the future of Tiger football under Hugh Freeze? We'll unpack that together. Now, Auburn's not the only school that has been recruiting like a program. If you follow me on the Twitter channels, or on the social channels rather, I put out the tweet whenever we see a school really cooking on the recruiting trail, and we put out the Auburn is recruiting like a program tweet probably sometime around Saturday. But we also, on Sunday, I believe it was, put out the tweet that Tennessee is recruiting like a program. So Tennessee now, if you're keeping track of what Josh Heupel has done there since he got to Knoxville, they are slowly but surely trending upward. Now, success isn't always linear, but you look at how the Vols are building this thing right now, I think we need to pay a little bit more attention to what they're doing, and I think we need to pay a little bit of attention to how they could trend here going forward beyond just 2024. So we'll talk about that. Also, if you saw Arkansas's defensive coordinator just have probably one of the greatest freestyles of all time on your social media timeline this past weekend, we'll unpack that together as well. But glad to have y'all here, man. There's a ton to get into. College football season is here. All right, we've said it for a long time on this show. There is no more time to be missing shows because there's a ton that's about to happen here over the course of the next couple of months. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss anything. All right, don't miss a minute of the coverage we got for you on this show. If you love college football, like we love college football, like you wake up at whatever time game day starts at for you, and that is how your college football Saturday starts, and you're watching all the way through the final games when like Hawaii's playing whoever at 2 a.m., this is your show. So lock in. We got a lot to get into. I told you we got a ton of predictions for you as it is prediction week. Before we get to that, though, I want us to unpack this topic together. Who's up for a statement year in 2024? And when I say statement year, I mean like a team that could walk out there and just silence all the noise, all the external volume around them, and just kind of drop the mic on the rest of the college football landscape. The first team that comes to mind for me when we unpack this prompt is Texas, man. Because Texas, there's a lot of volume around them that last year was kind of a one-off. People keep talking about old Texas and bad culture Texas and Texas that went 5-7 when Steve Sarkisian first got there. And then you take that volume and you pair it with the fact that Texas is moving into the most difficult conference in college football, of course being the SEC. For Texas, if you go out and do what you did last year in the SEC, and meaning you go make the college football playoff, forget win the conference, which is also, I believe, on the table for the Longhorns in 2024. Let's just say you make the college football playoff. You go out and have a double-digit kind of win season. I think at that point it's like, all right, what else do you have to say? Because Texas lost multiple big-time players to the NFL, from Xavier Worthy to Devondre Sweat to Byron Murphy to Adonai Mitchell. They lost a ton of key pieces from last year's squad. And then to run it back and have success yet again at the Tier 1 level, what else do you have to say? What else can you say about Steve Sarkisian and Texas? I think at that point it becomes very, very clear the thing at Texas, the mechanism at Texas is at that point not on cruise control, but I think at cruising altitude, to where we can expect Texas to be a Tier 1 team for the better part of the next however many years Steve Sarkisian ends up coaching at the University of Texas. Florida State, we've said this a couple times on this show, man. The opportunity for them is absolutely massive in 2024, because think about all that they lost. We just talked about what Texas lost. Florida State is 83rd in the country in returning production. Y'all, there's only 134 teams. Okay, so for Florida State, if they go out and have success again in 2024, let's say they win the conference. Put a more specific point on this. Let's say they win the state. Say they beat Florida, they beat Miami, does Florida State. At that point, they drop the mic on the entire state and make it very clear we are the big dog in this state. Because Miami, man, I've said it many times, I think they're trending upward in a massive way. I expect a lot from Cam Ward and the Canes this upcoming season. But if Florida State, with more or less a not totally brand new roster, but a lot of new pieces on that roster, and they end up having success again, and they beat a team like Miami, and they beat Florida yet again, like what other excuse do you have if you're an in-state kid that wants to stay in-state to not go to FSU? I think at that point the sales pitch is itself. The other part that you can make a statement for, in this case for the good folks in Tallahassee, I think Mike Norvell personally has a chance to drop the mic, because we've questioned him for a while now of, well, he likes to live off the portal. Well, the high school recruiting leaves something to be desired. Can you really live through the portal? And if they go out and win the conference again in 2024, they win the state again in 2024, Mike Norvell can just say, yeah, I do this. Say what you want about the portal. Say what you want about how unreliable it can be and it's not the most sustainable way to go about your business. I do this, all right? It may not be reliable for y'all, but look at my track record. Look at the way that we use the portal. We're more than fine doing things how we do things out here. So if you want to question our methods, more power to you, but results speak a whole heck of a lot louder than words, is what I believe Mike Norvell can say if they have success again in 2024. Speaking of statements, man, Michigan, they're kind of in the news right now with the whole Connor Stallions doc going on and other things of that nature around that whole situation. If Michigan makes the college football playoff, forget the Big Ten championship for a second. I think Michigan will factor into that conversation, but everyone's talking about Ohio State and Oregon. Let's say Michigan goes out and wins 10 football games, which is not by any stretch of the imagination unlikely, and they find themselves in that dance, in that field of 12. I think the statement you make if you're Michigan is, we're not going anywhere. I talked about Florida State being 83rd in returning production in all of college football. I mean, that looks like they have the majority of players back compared to Michigan. They are 128th in returning production in all of college football. Not to mention they lost their head coach. Not to mention they lost their DC. Like, there is a ton of new pieces at Michigan. And so if they go out and duplicate a similar level of success in what is really supposed to be, I say supposed to be in air quotes for those of y'all on podcast, what's supposed to be a down year for the Wolverines, like, it's very clear they're not going anywhere. And I'll say this too. I think there is maybe a little bit of a misconception as to how involved Sharon Moore is, or was rather, when Jim Harbaugh was there, in the way they did things. Like, there's this thought that Jim Harbaugh's now gone to the league, so goes with him his development and his culture and all those things. Like, Sharon Moore, I'm telling you right now, has his fingerprints all over that national title run they had last year in Ann Arbor. I promise you. So keep an eye on the Wolverines, man. I'm just telling you, they could have us all saying at the end of this season, man, they were supposed to take a step back, and then they just kept pushing forward. They've cracked the code to development and toughness and just bully ball in college football. So Michigan definitely has a chance to make a statement. One more team to talk about here before we move on to our predictions, Ohio State. And it's funny to say that Ohio State has a chance to make a statement year because really they're teed up to be a national championship kind of team. Like, they have the second best odds in Las Vegas right now to win the whole darn thing. Like, they went out and got Caleb Downs. They have arguably the best on paper, at least, going into the season, defense in all of college football. They have the best running back room in college football. They went out and got better at quarterback. But so I think what's important to be said here about Ohio State is for a long time, there's been this misconception about Ryan Day, or this conception about Ryan Day, I suppose, this opinion about Ryan Day. We'll see if it's a misconception or not. If Ohio State does what they're supposed to do, I think we can finally put to rest all the born on third base talk. Because remember now, Jim Harbaugh saying some people think they've hit a triple when really they were just born on third base. I'm paraphrasing there, but that was essentially what he said about Ryan Day and what he hasn't done at Ohio State. I think at that point we say, okay, let's give some flowers to Ryan Day at this point. Like, let's make sure that we keep that same energy we had against him as the college football public for him if they start doing what they're capable of doing. Because this thought they were born on third base, here's the deal, man. If you stand on third base long enough, at some point in time, the inning ends, right? Like, at some point in time, if Ohio State was going to fall off from a talent perspective, that would have happened already. People are saying, well, JD, like, the losses against Michigan and the way they've looked, and it's like, I understand all that. I'm not pushing back that those were bad losses. But I think to just continually dunk on Ryan Day and say that he's the problem and say that he's not the right guy at Ohio State, to me just feels a little bit irresponsible. And the reason why I feel that way is because he has consistently pushed the envelope to get better at Ohio State. And for himself as a head coach, his first time being a head coach is when he got the keys to the program in Columbus, he has continued to evolve. Like, think back to that game against Oregon, however many years ago it was. Mario Cristobal and company roll into the shoe. His first-year starter, C.J. Stroud. And C.J. Verdell, the running back for Oregon, I think is still running for touchdowns today in Columbus. Like, they ran all over them. At that point in time, Ryan Day is like, oh, we gotta figure this out on defense. We got to get better like today, Junior. And so he switches around the defense. That offseason, they go out and hire Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State. A couple years later, they have one of the best defenses in college football. This past season, Kyle McCord, not bad statistically, but wasn't good enough in the big moments, wasn't good enough on that last drive against Michigan, throws the interception to ultimately lose the game, and then the dust settles on the regular season. Kyle McCord was communicated in some form or fashion that he was not guaranteed to be the guy next year. Ryan Day says we got to get better, goes to the portal, gets Will Howard. Goes to the portal, gets Quinshon Judkins to add into an already pretty solid running back room led by Travion Henderson. Like, there's all these instances of Ryan Day continuing to try and up the ante at Ohio State. I think it'd be very easy if you're Ryan Day to just sit back and say, yeah, I went 11-1. It's really, really good. Things didn't break our way in the final game of the season. Like, let's just see if we can game plan our way to it. Let's see if myself as a play caller, I can get us better and over that hump. He says, no, I'm going to pass the sticks, bring in a head coach in the Big Ten from UCLA and Chip Kelly to be our offensive coordinator. Ryan Day is continuing to push the envelope. And so the statement, again, that Ohio State could make is nothing third base about it. Nothing that we're living off of the past regimes about what Ohio State is right now. So does that happen? Remains to be seen. Does it happen for Texas or Michigan or Florida State alike? Remains to be seen. But I'm telling you right now, all these teams, I believe, wholeheartedly are teed up to make a statement in 2024. So we'll see what happens, man. But there's statement opportunities all around us here if you know the right places to look. Shouts to everyone tuned in live right now. Make sure you have liked the video. It's arguably the biggest week of the season for us here. I do say the season because the season for us has already begun. As soon as we start calling our shots, that's when the season starts. We got a couple of predictions for you tomorrow, more than a couple. We got predictions on Nebraska tomorrow for their overall record. We got predictions on Tennessee and their overall record tomorrow. So, again, make sure you're locked in right here. Don't want y'all to miss a minute of it. Make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening on podcast, go ahead and subscribe to the feed for us there as well. We appreciate it tremendously. So every single prediction season, I say every single, for the time that I've been here at On 3, since Deion Sanders has been at Colorado, the prediction that we start with is with Colorado when it comes to the teams. The reason why, it has become very obvious for everyone in the college football public and the college football media space that the college football audience right now has a very, very high level of interest in what's going on at Boulder and what Deion Sanders is doing there. And so I think it's only right that we do this prediction season and get it on and popping with our Colorado record prediction. So the preseason win total in Vegas, the over-under is set at 5.5 wins for Colorado. I would be very careful for us to not buy into the extremes of the narratives out there around Colorado. Because while I'm all for extremes, like I am all for things being the greatest of all time or the worst of all time. Like I think that's always a fun talking point to pick apart. It's very rarely the case. The extremes you hear with Colorado are, well, they're going to make the college football playoff. They're going to win the Big 12. And the other extremes you hear are Deion Sanders is going to win 2 football games. I have a hard time buying too far into either of those for us right now as we sit here in July. When you look at what they have in-house, I think it's solid. Maybe it's not the best roster in college football, but I don't think it's nearly as poor as maybe some folks would like to lead you to believe. Look at the quarterback position. You have what really should be, in my opinion, a first-round pick, Shedeur Sanders. You have a wide receiver room that's good for anybody. Like, not just, oh, that's good for Colorado, a team that won one game 2 years ago. No, that's good just period. From LeJontay Wester to Travis Hunter, who might be pound for pound the best player in college football, if you want to talk about what he does on both sides of the football. Like, there's a lot there from a talent perspective. Dallin Hayden from Ohio State, I think, was a big get through the transfer portal. But the thing with Colorado that's a little bit tricky to square is just the unknowable. And when I say the unknowable, we don't know how the 40-plus transfers are going to factor in and translate and acclimate to what Colorado wants to do in 2024. And so some of assessing Colorado from a record point of view, when you try and break down what their wins and losses will be, is really, what does your gut tell you? Like, I think, I'm a firm believer in this. Your gut usually is going to be pretty on the money. When you look at Colorado, I think my gut tells me that there's a very low percentage chance they are as bad as they were last year on the line of scrimmage. And that's really the whole hinge point for this entire take on Colorado. Like, if you think they're going to be great, you think that offensive line has improved quite a bit. If you think they're going to be trashed, then you probably think they're going to let up 40 to 50-plus sacks yet again in 2024. I think that's a bit of a stretch. Now, defensively, they also have to step it up quite a bit. Like, they allowed 5 yards a carry last year. So the good news is, if you're a Colorado fan, can't get a whole lot worse on the line of scrimmage, and you went 4-8. And we're in a position to win a few other games against some really good football teams, Utah and Arizona being a couple of those last season. So the key to them being able to hit the over on this number is all about Shedeur Sanders and him progressing from year 1 to year 2 at Colorado. You're saying, JD, you just told me the offensive line and the defensive line was the key. That's the key to getting to where you want to go when it comes to competing for conference championships, if we're going to have that discussion. But if you want to find a way to win 6 or more ball games, to me, it falls on Shedeur Sanders. Because if Shedeur Sanders can be dialed in, he makes everyone's job easier. Talk about the offensive line and them having to improve. And they did improve by nature of what they did through the portal, is my assumption right now. Shedeur Sanders, if he is able to even speed up his own internal shot clock, if he's able to have even a better gauge for what the defense is doing pre-snap, gets the ball out of his hands quicker, well, you go from asking your offensive line to block for 3 seconds to asking them to block for 2.5 seconds. Y'all, that's a massive difference. I'm just telling you, it's a massive, massive difference. Talk about the defense and what they didn't do last year. If Shedeur Sanders is able to keep that offense on the field and be able to continue to keep drives alive, convert on third down, that defensive line is going to have a little bit more juice under them. They're going to have a little bit more stamina when it comes to being able to stop the run. And so I'm not telling you he's the end-all, be-all, but when it comes to being able to make a bowl game, to me it really is about Shedeur Sanders. If they can have a little more success down the field throwing the football with Shedeur Sanders, that lightens up the box. That takes away what defenses can do when it comes to stopping the run, creates more balance. So all of this, to me, is on the shoulders of Shedeur Sanders. Again, if you want to talk about competing for things past that, you go talk about the trenches. So let's take a look at the schedule here. I need Colorado to be 4-1 heading into October if we want to talk about them hitting the over on this 5.5 win total. Your North Dakota State to start the year was not a layup by any stretch of the imagination, as much as Deion Sanders would have appreciated that. At Nebraska, at Colorado State, which was a dogfight last year, and then you got Baylor and you're at UCF. I think Colorado is good enough to win all those football games. Will they do that? Remains to be seen. Because they're going to get tested game 2 at Nebraska with how much physicality they have up front. Now, the rest of the season, that's the big question. Can you line it up in the trenches with those big boys in your conference? I'm talking about Kansas State. I'm talking about Utah. I'm talking about Oklahoma State. Are you good enough when it comes to the big human beings to be able to win in different ways? So when it comes to our prediction and how we feel about Colorado, we've said this many times about Deion Sanders. Expectations dictate happiness. If you expect Colorado to go to the college football playoff, it's like, well, more power to you. I mean, there's definitely been cases where teams overachieve in a massive way, but if Las Vegas, Nevada, the city in the middle of the desert that has massive skyscrapers, And they have massive skyscrapers because they have people making bets that ultimately the house wins to build those skyscrapers. Maybe that's an expectation that's a little bit lofty. I think we talk about success and progress for Colorado. I think it looks like a bowl game. I really do. And so when I talk about what they're going to be in 2024, that's the context I assess them with. So I think for Colorado in 2024, they will finish with a record of 6-6. They can absolutely finish higher than that if they're able to have better trench play. At the same time, they can absolutely finish 4-8 again if they're not able to be multiple offensively and the defense kind of stays where they were a season ago. A lot of pieces at Colorado. But let's let it bake a little bit. Let's let it progress a little bit before we start talking about them competing for the college football playoff. If they get a couple of breaks, maybe that's a conversation. But Vegas is telling you, I'm telling you, I think our eyes should tell us that that's not who Colorado is just yet. And the thing that I don't love about the discussion around Colorado is the way that this whole thing has caught fire so early and started to, gain a lot of traction last year when it was Colorado beats TCU. Instead of it being like, man, that's awesome for Colorado, good for Colorado, like, Deion Sanders is, really starting to get something rolling over there. It went from that maybe early on to then right away being like, well, do you believe in Colorado? It's like, Coach, I've seen 2 games. I don't know if I believe in Colorado just yet. I believe in what I saw. I think seeing is believing. And so I think success, again, for Colorado, 6 wins is right where I would love to see them at. I think that's where they're going to end up being at. I think Vegas is on the money with that 5.5 win total, and I think there is expectation for them to be better than last season at a lot of key spots, most notably on the offensive and defensive line. But if they want to get to the over total, I think it's on Shedeur Sanders, and I think he'll be good enough to get that done. So let me know in the comment section. You got Colorado going over 6 wins? Are you taking the under on that 5.5? Let me know. But that's where we stand on Coach Prime & Co. as we sit here in July in the heart of prediction season. They're going to be fun, man. I mean, there's always this thought that we're anti-Colorado. We're not anti-Colorado. In fact, it would be good for us, for Colorado, to go undefeated. That would be phenomenal for everybody in sports media. Deion Sanders has brought a ton of juice to the college football media space. He's fun to watch. I love to hear him at the podium. I think he's great. I love Deion Sanders. And so 6 wins I think would be phenomenal for them their second year out there. Again, reminder, they won 1 game before he got there. These things tend to take time. Quick sip of caffeine, and we're back to it. So 1 sec here. All right. Still open invite for anyone who wants to sponsor the show that has a caffeine product. The DMs are open. So Auburn is on fire right now on the recruiting trail. They are cooking. Hugh Freeze and company just had a massive recruiting weekend. Their big event of the summer is called Big Cat Weekend. It's starting to trend more and more towards like a Big Cat Week. What does this mean for Auburn? Because as you sit here right now, at the time of us recording, or time of us being live on the air right now, if you're watching this back, it's a one-off video, they have a top 10 class in all of college football in the 2025 cycle. In 2026 now, they have the number 1 class. Now we're a ways away from that class having pen, meet, paper, but it's great to have a top 5 class in July. It's great to have a top 5 class in the fall. They have the number 6 class right now. What does this really mean, though, for Auburn? Because Penn hasn't met paper yet. These guys are committed verbally, but we've seen in the college football recruiting world that is, where we are right now, how quickly commitments can change and verbals can mean this and that, and the Hayes Fawcett graphics are flying all over the place. What I think this means right now for Auburn is a couple of things. The first is they are reaping the rewards of the legwork they've done since Hugh Freeze got there. Like last year, they won 6 ball games. If we're going to be real here, you should not recruit in the top 10 after winning 6 ball games and losing to New Mexico State. That shouldn't happen. However, talk about the New Mexico State game all you want on social media. Auburn also played Georgia really freaking close, down to the last drive. They also took Alabama to 4th and 31. And there's no such thing as moral victories in college football, but I do think there's such thing as marketable moments. And Hugh Freeze and this staff, I happen to believe, are using those marketable moments to their advantage. I think also the reason they're recruiting so well is look at the brand that Auburn is. Like this is not like some no-name school with a lackluster brand coming out of nowhere. Like this is Auburn we're talking about. That brand has always carried weight. That brand has always had a lot of juice to it. And so what we're seeing now when it comes to their success in the recruiting trail so far is the alignment from the powers that be at Auburn, Hugh Freeze just being a dog and recruiting his tail off, the staff he has assembled doing the same, and the resources behind Auburn also being willing to make it happen. And so you got to give your flowers to Auburn. You got to give a lot of credit to Auburn for the way they've recruited so far. But the big thing this means to me when we talk about Auburn in 2024 is this thing is teed up to just explode in 2024. And what I mean by that is going back to what I just said. You recruited a top 10 level after 6 wins. What can you be if you win 8 games? Heck, what can you be if you end up beating Alabama in that final game of the season? How high do you end up finishing on National Signing Day, the day that actually counts where you're ranked? I think that deserves to be acknowledged a little bit because if they have that kind of success on the field, it's going to translate. We've said it for a long time here. I think that for everyone who's committed to Auburn right now, they're doing a great job peer recruiting, I have to believe, and a lot of those guys they're recruiting, I think they may just be looking for a reason to go to Auburn. I think you go see the Waltos, which is like a spaceship, we said. It's like a $92 million facility. It's, like less than 2 years old. You go take a tour of that place. You go talk to that staff. Like, I think you're looking for a reason to commit there is how I would feel about it if I were considering some of these schools across the country, if I had Auburn in my list of options. One more thing I'll say here. It's great to talk about what they're going to be on signing day and what they are right now. But think about the future for Auburn. Like Hugh Freeze has gotten the arrow pointing up for Auburn football, the trajectory of Auburn football in a really good place. He's been there for what? 18 months? Less than 2 years. What's it going to be in 3 years? Especially if they have on-field success. If you're able to flip it that quickly and capture momentum that quickly, that should scare the rest of college football for what Auburn can be going forward now. Because they're, 2 years removed? A year removed from 5-7? And we're already talking about them signing a top 10, dare I say, potentially top 5 class if they do the right things on the field in 2024. So keep an eye on the Tigers now. Sitting at number 6 right now at the time of us being live on Tuesday morning. When it comes time for National Signing Day, if they win at the level they expect to win at, they have the resources, they have the brand, they have the alignment, they have the head coach, they have the staff, and I think a really fun brand of football to play that could ultimately be a major powder keg for them if they end up having success on the field in 2024. So Auburn recruiting like a program. Keep tabs on the Tigers, man. They're going to be a force. Don't let Auburn get hot. Do not let them get hot. So prediction season continues to roll right along here. Let's go with another record prediction, and this time let's talk about the Florida Gators. Florida Gators have been one of the most polarizing teams, I think, in all of college football since the season ended last year. A lot of talk around Billy Napier and his job security and things like that. The over-under win total for the Gators is at 4.5. Taking the under, taking the over. We'll give you our final record prediction for Florida here in a matter of moments. Before we get to that, though, Florida fans, lock in right here. If you're watching this as a one-off video on YouTube, like it's probably in the 6 to 8 minute range, we appreciate you being dialed in. Make sure you're subscribed. But this is part of a live show that we do every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So lock in with us. Don't want y'all to miss a minute of us talking about the greatest sport on the face of planet Earth, which is college football. Lock in. We appreciate you for that. Here's the confusing thing about Florida. People see the schedule, and they see what happened last year from a record point of view, missing the bowl game, and they say, oh, man, Florida, they're in for it. Billy Napier, man, that seed is I don't know how he's going to do it. I do not know how he's going to do it. And no one's denying the record last year is less than desirable. No one's denying that the schedule this year is brutal. But look at what they have on this roster. Personnel is not the same as the path. The path is something you can't control. The path is just the schedule that you get from the schedule makers and you go from there. The roster, though, what they have in-house, I think, is a lot better than a lot of people would like to give credit for. And here's the reason why, just spoiler alert, I'm a lot higher on Florida than I think the rest of the college football public is. Every single gripe or issue you would have with Florida, I think there is a very reasonable and logical solution to that gripe. You say, well, the offense, man, like, can't score less than 27 a game and expect to have success against that schedule, man. There's no way. Yeah, that's right. But Graham Mertz is going into his second year in the system. He's played a lot of football. We've seen a lot of individuals, their second year in the system, have a ton of success. Joe Burrow being one of those guys. Baker Mayfield being one of those guys. I'm not talking about Graham Mertz being Joe Burrow, but I am telling you, I think it's fair for us to at least acknowledge guys that have played a lot of football, like a Burrow, like a Mayfield, like a Mertz, now having another year in the system after transferring. That makes a whole lot of sense. Nick De La Torre made that point, I believe, the other day on the On3 Roundtable channel, which I think deserves a little bit of acknowledgement. I think it's a really good point made by Nick there from Gators Online. They say, well, it's not explosive enough. Maybe so. Maybe last year wasn't explosive enough. No one's denying that. But, again, Graham Mertz getting another year in the system and also getting more weapons. Shamir Dickey from Wisconsin. Big-time get for them via the portal, I believe. A sneaky big-time get. Big-time in the sense that that's a guy that Graham Mertz has played a lot of football with. That chemistry is already there. Trey Wilson, I've told you, one of the best playmakers in college football. Elijah Badger, great after the catch. He was actually one of the more high-profile gets for them from that spring transfer portal. There's a lot of pieces there to fix those explosivity issues on offense. Well, hey, the defense has to be better. Defense does have to be better. But what goes into defensive football? At a base level, it's coaching and it's players. Players, I believe, are better. At the very least, they're more experienced. And I think at best, you talk about the improvements on the back end of the defense, bringing a guy like Asa Turner from Washington, who's going to play safety for them, and he's done a lot of good things throughout his career. That is a major factor we have to account for. Talk about coaching. Well, JD, Austin Armstrong, I'm just not sure about the way he's coaching the defense. There was too many busts last year. They brought in Ron Roberts to sort of be to steal a phrase from again, Nick De La Torre. So shouts to Nick De La Torre. Kind of the football dad of sorts for an Austin Armstrong. Just kind of getting a second pair of eyes for Austin Armstrong. The way that I'll say this here, he is his spotter defensively. Doesn't matter how strong you are, it's always a good idea to have a spotter when you go lift heavy. Austin Armstrong, every single Saturday, is lifting heavy. All right, this is a new thing for him, being a DC in the SEC. Having someone like Ron Roberts, who's been around the block a couple times, that's going to benefit them. I promise you. Now, here's the other thing that you hear a lot about Florida, and something that I think needs to be unpacked with a little bit greater depth. I think Billy Napier gets knocked a lot for his play calling. And maybe more specifically, he gets knocked for not giving up his play calling. And I'm sitting here saying, why? Can you blame the guy? I don't blame Billy Napier. Everyone and their mama is talking about him being on the hot seat. And he's a guy that has cut his teeth and got this job because of what he does as a play caller, because of what his offenses do. And you want him to pass the sticks because he hasn't had the success that he would like to have 2 years in? If I'm Billy Napier, I'm saying, okay, if I go out, if I lose this job, so be it. But I am resting my head on that pillow at night, knowing that we went out on my terms. Like, I'm cool if we don't, have the success that we want to have and we fall short of our expectations, as long as we do it knowing that I did everything possible in my power to get that done. I would feel very differently if I were to lose that job on Billy Napier and I passed the offensive coordinator duties off to somebody else, all because there was a little bit of external pressure. Give me a break, man. Billy Napier, too, it's worth noting, he averaged over 30 a game all 4 years he was at Louisiana. It hasn't translated just yet at Florida, but doesn't mean he can't coach offensive football. We've seen that he can. There is a mountain of evidence that he can. So I don't have an issue with him not giving up play calling duties. Honestly, I love it. You think that's what's best for you? Do what's best for you. Do what's best for your team. So let's get to the schedule now as we kind of break down the record here. Yes, it's brutal. It's brutal. We've talked about that for a long time, but what now? Because at some point the talking does have to end and the pads have to get popping. The first 4 to 5 games of this season are absolutely massive. Why? Because you are the most fresh, all right? You have, your most healthy roster you're going to have all season. And also, it's only going to get tougher as we get into November. You want to really establish that buy-in, that confidence, and that swag early on. That, okay, yes, all the things we've talked about throughout this offseason, us as a team, we're going to squat low, we're going to be powerful, we're going to operate this way offensively and defensively. All those things that we talked about when we weren't playing games actually works when we get to playing games. You want to have early success to make that happen. October is all about keeping it on the rails. All about keeping it on the rails. And no competitor actually thinks like that. But if they can go 2-1 against UCF, at Tennessee, and Kentucky, phenomenal. Phenomenal. Let's keep a good thing going. Now, November is going to hit like a tidal wave. No way around it. Again, no competitor actually thinks in the context of how many games can we win here to keep our hopes alive to do X, Y, and Z in the postseason or whatever. But like, it's going to be brutal. All right, we all understand that. How stable are they heading into November to be able to handle that tidal wave? What I mean by that is health is one thing, but also just like psychologically. Are you in a spot where you feel good about what you're doing internally? Is there good cohesion? Is there good harmony? I'm not questioning that. I'm just telling you that is massive when you go play against Georgia, when you go to Texas. All those things are massive. And so what we said about Auburn earlier on in this live show is the same thing I would say about Florida in the month of November. You need marketable moments. Moments that you can package up and go pitch, whether it be on the recruiting trail or to the powers that be or to the fan base that says, hey, this thing is going somewhere. Here is an appetizer. Don't you want the entree? Here is where this thing is eventually going to end up. Here is a preview of the movie. Buy into this. Give Billy Napier some more time. How that would look? Let's play Georgia tough. Let's play Texas down to the very last snap. Heck, let's beat LSU. Let's beat Ole Miss. Let's beat Florida State. Those to me would be the marketable moments where regardless of what happens the rest of November, the rest of the season even, those are moments you can point to and say, I think there's something there. There's something to build off of. And so as we get to this record prediction, man, I've said this a couple times, 6-6 is a very, very intriguing spot to land at. At 6-6, I think if you're Billy Napier, the verdict is very much so still out on what he would be as a head coach. Now, you probably use the eye test quite a bit to try and determine exactly what Florida will be, going back to marketable moments. But if you go 6-6 with that schedule, I would just be asking, like, are we sure he's not the right guy at Florida? Because 6-6 against that schedule, what is that in the ACC? What is that in the Big 12? Like a 9-10 win season? Not throwing shade, just asking. That's the way it feels to me. Is it really worth, at 6-6, hitting the reset button on your roster for the next 2 years? Because the portal does what the portal does, man. Talk about NIL, talk about the next hire, having good retention. The portal does what the portal does if you change head coaches. It does, all right? So let's not act like you're not hitting the reset button if you part ways with a Billy Napier. That's my question mark around 6-6. Now, me personally, I think Florida goes 7-5. That is my prediction for them in 2024. I think there's a lot more to this roster than what meets the eye. I think they're going to catch somebody in November. I don't know who it's going to be, but they're going to catch somebody slipping in November. And I think there's a lot more belief and buy-in internally within that building than most folks will give credit. A lot of people are just saying, Florida, man, they're going to lose week 1 and roll over and play dead. And it's like, now the game against Miami is massive. Do not get it twisted. That'll be big for setting the tone. But I have not seen Florida pack it up once in the Billy Napier era. Not once. I've seen games where they're outmatched. The game against Oregon State in their bowl game a couple years ago, that looked like they were maybe a little bit in over their head, and they had just everybody and their mama sitting out in that game. I haven't seen Florida just pack it up and say, no, we're not playing for each other. We're not playing for Napier. I think they're going to be able to get to that 7-win mark. I really do. And I think they'll have enough there to keep Billy Napier around for another season in Gainesville. But it's going to be fun, man. It's going to be fun. A very big game for them in 2024 will be the game against Tennessee. It's going to be in Knoxville, which I know the folks out there, a part of the Tennessee fan base, are very encouraged by. But let's talk about Tennessee for a second, man. Tennessee, I believe, wholeheartedly is trending upward in a massive way. And not just in the trending up of like, oh, yeah, good for Tennessee. They're starting to make incremental gains. It's like, no, Tennessee, I believe, is speaking softly and carrying a big stick. They had another big recruiting weekend this past weekend. They currently have a top 10 class, and they are in it for the number 1 offensive tackle in America in David Sanders. There's been a steady trend upwards internally on Tennessee on the roster and what Josh Heupel's done there, but also on the recruiting trail. Like, there's been signs of Tennessee making gains when we look at these class rankings. In 2022, 15th ranked class. In 2023 and 2024, they were in that 12 to 13 range. Right now in 2025, they are inside the top 10. And the thing about Tennessee, when you talk about their class rankings, it's not just the quarterback. Like, as long as Josh Heupel is coaching at Tennessee, they're going to have a quarterback, someone who can get it done for you. We've seen that from them. I mean, talk about Joe Milton and all the things that they have to say about him negatively in the college football public based on what happened last year. They still scored 32 points a game. So he wasn't bad. But look at how they've recruited from a Nico Iamaleava to a Jake Merklinger to a George McIntyre in this class, who I think is going to be a stud. Like, they're going to have quarterbacks. But it's not just the quarterback position. To me, it's the personnel that they're landing on their recruiting trail and have landed at other key positions. Talk about what they're doing up front. James Pierce, he's going to be a top 15 pick. He committed to Heupel in the 2022 class. 4-star linebacker Arian Carter. I think he's going to have a solid role in the future here for Tennessee. 5-star defensive lineman David Hobbs in that 23 class. 5-star Jordan Ross, an edge in the 2024 class. 4-star offensive tackle Bennett Warren in the 24 class. Douglas Utu, 4-star offensive lineman in the 2025 class. Right now, in it for David Sanders. Like, we keep going down the line here. It's like, Josh Heupel is not just recruiting quarterbacks. He's recruiting skill position, absolutely, but also, like, the big boys up front. They're landing those guys as well. And we talk about, what the game of football is and how it's changing schematically, and that's, there's definitely some nuances and there's definitely some things that are going to be trending here over the course of the next couple of years that we've talked about on this show with how they draw it up, but like, it's still about having the big human beings. Like, the law of nature is the big people will always move the small people, man. There's no way around it. That is just a fact of life. There's a reason you don't hear a lot about that undersized lineman that's a great story in the NFL, because it doesn't really happen. Like, I am a guy who will root for a dude with heart 11 times out of 10. I feel like I was that guy when I played football. There's a reason why I'm speaking into this microphone and talking to you guys on YouTube right now and not playing football somewhere else, all right? Like, I'm 5'11". It is what it is. And so when we talk about what he's building in Tennessee, Josh Heupel's building a gritty football team. There's a lot of, I think, moments that live in our minds, a lot of snapshots of Tennessee being this aerial attack and how much they spread out their wide receivers, and Jalen Hyatt winning the Biletnikoff, and that Hendon Hooker season in 2022 where they beat Alabama, and all they did throwing the football. Like, they want to be a gritty football team under Josh Heupel. They're recruiting that way. I believe they played that way last year. That's who they want to be. They want to be a tough football team. And I think when you talk about the way that he's built this roster now, the way they've kind of stockpiled, I believe, in a lot of ways, some of this upper level talent, and the way they're recruiting on both lines of scrimmage, Josh Heupel's system offensively is built to compensate for a talent gap. Like, when they spread you all the way out to the sideline and they get their one-on-one matchup, they do that to make it happen on the perimeter as opposed to having to make it happen up front. Not that they can't, but when you line up against Georgia and they have those 5-star plus defensive linemen across the board, or those old Alabama teams, like, that's not a matchup you're going to win most frequently. But the way Josh Heupel's building this now, what if in the next couple of years that talent gap is significantly decreased, if not non-existent? Then what? My take on Tennessee now, as they continue to trend upward, man, like, the talent level for them is going to continue to increase. The recruiting rankings say it. The class rankings say it. The roster is saying it. Look at the quarterback position, man. They are always going to have a quarterback, I believe, to separate when that talent gap is comparable or when that talent level is similar. That's where Tennessee will pull away. That will be the difference. And so we talk about Tennessee trending up, man, with them having a top 10 class right now and them being in the David Sanders sweepstakes. This is a sign of the times. They've recruited at a high level for a long time. They're continuing to recruit at a higher level. And when they get into that neighborhood where they're recruiting in the top 10, top 5 on National Signing Day, I think everyone should be very, very nervous. Very, very nervous. My opinion on things. But Tennessee, man, they're going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. The Nico era is back on and popping. And, or not back. The Nico era is on and popping, period. Nico time in Knoxville, a lot of folks are fired up. So let the good times roll. Little burst of caffeine here, and we'll get to Oklahoma's record prediction. Just a matter of moments. But if you haven't yet, go ahead and like the video. We appreciate you so much for it. We'll keep a good thing going. All right. Let's get to it, man. One more record prediction for you to finish off the first day, or the first show, rather, of Prediction Week. What's Oklahoma going to go in 2024? Vegas has them at an over-under win total of 7.5. Now, you see that, you're like, wait a second. Oklahoma, that team that pretty much owned the Big 12 for the better part of the last however many years, that Oklahoma? Like that brand, that logo, and that over-under win total, they don't really make a whole lot of sense when you see them together. But I think what Vegas is telling us here with this win total is we don't know what to do with you. We're not sure. New quarterback, a lot of new pieces on the offensive line, if not a whole new offensive line. New conference, like we don't know what to do with you. We don't know if we can trust you just yet. And so I think when we talk about Oklahoma and them being unproven, sometimes us as human beings, we take unproven and we just chalk it up to not talented or hopeless or it's not going to work. Like, I don't think that's Oklahoma. I think it's fair to be skeptical. I think it's extremely unfair to say there's no way they have success. Because with every question mark you have about them, in the same way we talk about Florida, I think you can also make a case for it working at a really high level for Oklahoma. New quarterback, had a bad bowl game, still was a 5-star plus kind of player. I promise you, like your school probably wanted Jackson Arnold when he came out of high school. New offensive line. Well, got one of the best offensive line coaches in America, and Bill Bedenbaugh. That's a cause for optimism. I think the best way to put it when you talk about Oklahoma in 2024, they are a program that will have to live with their legs. All right, so I just moved this past weekend from an apartment to a rental home, and we're moving a big old couch. We're moving a couple of beds, and like, if we had tried to lift those things with our back, we would have been in a world of hurt. Why? Because our back and our arms, not nearly as strong as our legs. The legs of this operation at Oklahoma is the defense. It will have to be a defensive-led operation from the jump. Now, will it be that way in November? Remains to be seen. But as the offensive line tries to gel those first few games, as Jackson Arnold starts to get more comfortable those first few games, I need my defense to carry the torch and to make the heavy lift early. Because you have all that returning production back, because Brent Venables is from the defensive side of the ball, and I promise you that defense is his baby. I don't care whose name is at the DC spot. They bring back 79% production from last year's unit that only allowed 23 points a game. Even more importantly, and we've said this a couple times, you bring back the leadership behind that defense. You bring back the swagger, the attitude. You bring back Billy Bowman at safety. Danny Stutzman at linebacker, the heart and soul of this whole operation. Like, that is going to be the catalyst early on. And so if you want to give Jackson Arnold some confidence, you want to help him feel comfortable, give him the reassurance that if they go 3 and out, if he decides to eat it for a sack instead of, trying to push the ball deep into double coverage, that's a good decision because the defense has his back. I promise you, that will give him confidence, and that will allow him to play much more free, knowing that he doesn't have to make a play every single drive for them to be successful. Because once that offense clicks now, once that offensive line kind of gels, and once Jackson Arnold has the light bulb on, they've got playmakers to get the football to. Deion Burks is a name that nationally a lot of people are going to know, probably by the end of September, by what he's going to do on that field. I'm just telling you. Get him comfortable. Defense, hold it down. Good things are going to happen. So let's talk about Oklahoma here in terms of their schedule. September is the big swing month. There's 2 games I have circled if I'm a Sooner fan. It's Tennessee, for storyline reasons, obviously, but also it being your first game in the SEC. And then welcome to the SEC, baby. You turn around the next day, flip right around, and you play at Auburn the next weekend. The big reason why those games are important, one, is for establishing momentum and confidence. That's obvious. But you got to beat who's in your neighborhood, man. If you want to win at the highest level in college football, you got to beat who's in your neighborhood. And Auburn right now, them going into year 2 under Hugh Freeze, I think they are in a comparable spot from a roster perspective. You talk about Tennessee. They're going to be really good, but they're playing a new quarterback as well. Beat who's in your neighborhood. Beat who's in your realm when it comes to the competitive nature of where your team stands. Now, by October 12th, we talked about Jackson Arnold, trying to figure it out and get comfortable and all that. New offensive coordinator as well. By October 12th, when you play Texas in Red River, how far along is the offense? Because at that point, we're rolling. That's going to determine if you end up getting the over on that, if you end up making a bowl game like that. That is the number for us, okay? Texas, South Carolina, at Ole Miss. You play Maine, catch your breath a little bit. At Missouri, play Alabama, finish at LSU. We got to be rolling because in that run, look at the offenses there. Texas, Ole Miss, heck, Missouri, Alabama, LSU, all those teams would not surprise me in the slightest if they all scored north of 37 a game. Translation, you're going to have to bring your cleats that day. You're going to have to make sure that you brought your Gatorade because they're going to score a lot of points. Oklahoma might be a Powerade school, so bring your Powerade for the good folks in Norman. So when we talk about the record here, the defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. And Oklahoma is one of the trickiest teams for me to get a pulse on because I think you could make an argument for them having a tremendous season, winning somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 games. You can make a case for them missing a bowl game. I could see either path depending on how those variables we just talked about end up falling. And so for me, I'm going to fall somewhere in the middle there. I'm going to have Oklahoma at 6-6. They could definitely overachieve my expectations. They could definitely hit the over there. I'm going to put them at 6-6 this year. I want to see this offensive line gel. I want to see how this roster stacks up against some of those teams in the SEC. The game against Tennessee is going to tell us a lot. I'm going to put Oklahoma at 6-6 as we stand here right now, but here's the big thing I want us to all get aligned on. JD, you're 6-6. You hate the Sooners? No, we're not saying that. We're not saying that. Don't panic. If you go 6-6 this year, do not panic. It does not mean Brent Venables isn't the guy. It does not mean Jackson Arnold's a bad quarterback. It does not mean that you can't compete in the SEC. What it means is there's some growing pains. It means you broke in a new offensive line, a new OC, a new quarterback. There's some growing pains. Hiring Brent Venables, giving him the extension was always about the long-term play. 6-6 with that record, just so we're all on the same page here, probably good for still being in that 10-win range in the Big 12. Not throwing shade at the Big 12, just how I feel about it. This is what you signed up for. This is the SEC. This is the best conference in college football. The entry point is a little bit different than maybe you would have liked. You would have liked to have a more experienced commodity at quarterback or whatever. It is what it is. Oklahoma, I think, is still in a good spot going forward. Still think Venables is the right guy, but that is my prediction for them when it comes to their record in 2024. All right, so this is a new segment I want us to break in here together. If you've watched this show for any length of time, man, we know that we have the greatest job on the face of the planet Earth. We know that it is absolutely hilarious that we get to sit in front of a camera and talk into a microphone and talk about college football, and they pay us a paycheck at the end of every week for it. It's just hilarious. And so we make sure that we operate in a way where we know we have the best job in the world. We bring energy, we bring juice every single show. We do our best to, at least, and we appreciate y'all bringing the same. So a new segment here, Get Juiced. Get Juiced is the name of the segment, and this is a segment where we just show you something that we love across the college football landscape or otherwise, and it's someone bringing energy, bringing passion, bringing excitement to whatever they're doing. So for Get Juiced this week, we got Arkansas defensive coordinator Travis Williams bringing the juice, getting juiced with his team in their team room probably at the end of summer two. Let me set the stage here a little bit for you. During the college football offseason, during that, that portion after spring football, you get a little bit of time off. Then you have summer one and summer two, two different blocks, as I think how most schools do it, where you are doing summer school, you're doing early morning workouts, you're lifting, you're running, you're doing some voluntary, I put in quotation marks there, players only practices. It is a grind, dude. It's hot most places you're at. You're kind of just finding a way to get it done. It is the dog days before fall camp. And so to see Travis Williams get fired up with his team and kind of bring some excitement here. I loved it. It went viral on the socials. But go ahead and check it out for yourself. Here's Travis Williams.
T-Will back and you know the flow is a free throw. Really from the hood, all I fear is God and the Rico. Made it out the gutter, I'm putting on for the have-nots. Always strive for more, but I'm thankful for what I have. Got no play wrong with T-Will, he's a head case. All he do is blitz. If I say sorry, it's hammer time, cause it's too legit. You don't know I'm not new to this. On the mic, I'm truly sick. Don't schedule us for a homecoming, cause we will ruin it. Yeah, choke slamming running backs when they hit the hole. Yeah, Lennon and Cam gon' ball when I say go. Yeah, DBs flying around, yeah, they out of here. Yeah, standards, not starters, cause that's what got us here. Yeah, 6'6" quarterback and he dropping dimes. Yeah, Porter went crazy on the offensive line. Yeah, we hear the whispers and we gon' face them all. Yeah, the hill 2 trill and we embrace the hog. Yeah.
Dude, I promise you, I've never spoken to Travis Williams. I've never spoken to anyone that plays football at Arkansas, but I promise you, every single player on that team probably loves that dude. Like, just bring in the juice, bring in the excitement, bring in the energy. Like, college football, at the end of the day, man, it's fun. It's sports. It's the greatest thing on the face of planet Earth. Like, to be able to enjoy that and celebrate it with your boys, I love that. Also, check out the bars. Like, Phillip Dukes of the 5-Star Flex on the On3 Recruits channel sat down with Travis Williams, actually, and broke this all down in depth. But some of my favorite bars, man, he says, don't play around with T-Will. He's a head case. All he do is blitz. That's the kind of DC I want on my team. That's the guy that I want running the show defensively, saying, yeah, I'm not afraid to blitz. Let's go. And then rapping about it. Don't schedule us for a homecoming because we will ruin it. That's a bar. I absolutely love that bar. I promise you, man, those players love that. And look at the way that they responded to the, yeah, coach. Like, that fired me up, dude. That fired me up. We need to get that going here in the On3 office. Also, shouting out the players. 6'6" quarterback. He's dropping dimes, referring to Taylor Green, the transfer quarterback from Boise State to Arkansas, going to start for them. He is every bit of 6'6", too. We saw him in person at SEC Media Days. Said Cam and Landon ball when I say go. Landon Jackson, absolute freak show defensive line for them at Arkansas. College football is awesome. Being able to have a peek into like the team room and the locker room aspect of it is just so cool with the way that that social media is these days. So college football is awesome. It's a great example of why, and a lot of fun to be able to talk about it with y'all here on this show. Getting juiced with college football. Less than 30 days away now. Right around the corner, man. Going to be a good time. So, hear from y'all now via the live chat. Let's bring in that man, Nick Brake. Nick, what's going on, baby? What's going on in the live chat today?
Yeah. Well, first we got a super chat.
Heck
go back and find that. Yeah, there we go. T. Smith, how do we feel about Notre Dame's Shamrock Series jerseys this year? A couple people in the chat responded that they didn't really like them. What do you think?
Dude, I have to be honest. I wasn't a fan. And I love the Shamrock Series. I like the way they roll it out. They always have a cool trailer. The Shamrock Series, to me, just the font on the numbers was really my issue with it. Like the pointy structure of it looked a little bit weird. Wasn't a fan. Doesn't mean I don't love Marcus Freeman. Doesn't mean I don't think Notre Dame has a chance to make the college football playoff this year, or a better than a chance to make the college football playoff this year. Wasn't a fan. Wasn't for me.
Okay. I just saw them. I think they're okay.
Yeah, tell me your take here. You like them?
Yeah, they're fine.
Okay.
The truth. What is the lowest rated recruiting class you've had so far? 29 years as a Hawaii coach, my lowest was a 98th. I'm assuming he's talking about the game.
About college football 25?
Wait.
Dude, I haven't gone into dynasty mode yet. I haven't done it. I haven't done it. My brother, though, is building an absolute machine out there at UConn. He was the OC at Tulane. Now he's at UConn. He's the head coach there, building something special out there in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm. The truth. please get in the comments and tell me that 29 years, like you've played 29 seasons on all of the games and not just like CFP 25 that's been out for like, what, 2 weeks?
That is hardcore, dude.
That's like 2 seasons a
That's
day.
hardcore. I love that, man. And I love also that they're watching our show. If they've played 29 seasons of college football, 25, they're an absolute sicko, and we love them for that. So, yeah. that is just proof that the right people are finding the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I await the truth response there because that's pretty amazing. I actually can't find any more questions.
Okay. Well, let's see. I see someone saying there's a lot of pushback, or not pushback, but a lot of talk around Oklahoma. It looks like Oklahoma is going to get welcomed into the SEC. Mm-hmm. All these dudes talk about Oklahoma. We see someone citing Oklahoma's record versus the SEC. Here's all I'll say. Entry point really matters in this. Like Texas walking into the SEC, coming off of a college football playoff berth, bringing back their quarterback, like that is massive. Oklahoma is breaking in a quarterback in the toughest conference in college football and a new offensive line. 2 position groups you probably don't want to be fresh at walking into the SEC. So I'm going to say it again. Let's not overreact to the first year in the SEC for Oklahoma. Vegas is saying it. We're saying it. I think it's going to be an acclimation year. Doesn't mean Venables isn't the man. Doesn't mean Jackson Arnold isn't a good quarterback. It just means there's some growing pains here. So let's all just kind of hold it OU stock for a little bit longer. Same thing we said when he got to Norman and took over a roster that had lost quite a few pieces via the portal. Like, let's just let it bake for a second. Let's let it bake.
So the truth says he sims the games. Thank goodness.
Okay.
That's a lot of football.
That is a lot of football. Part of me is a little bit like, man, that would have been cool if he played 29 years,
cool.
though,
Craig, this is the last question. So thank you very much, Craig. Ask some good questions in the chat that we're going to use as our poll tomorrow. But it says, when is Notre Dame going to join the Big Ten? Seems so odd that they're still an independent team.
This is a really good question. And this is, I don't know if it's the Big Ten. I mean, the ACC gets thrown out there a lot with them for obvious reasons. I have held the stance that I think it will take something on the field that sets off the alarm for Notre Dame to say, hey, we can't keep existing this way. And I think what that would look like is Notre Dame runs the table, goes undefeated, and they end up with that 5 seed. Remember, if you're Notre Dame, you cannot be in that group that gets a bye in the college football playoff because you're not technically a conference champion. And so for Notre Dame, if they were to have that kind of a year, they're clearly number 1 or what have you, and then they end up losing the first round, I think there would be a lot of discussion about, well, man, what did we just cost ourselves? How much competitively is this hurting us? Because I understand the NBC money. I'm sure it's great. I understand that is a massive, massive advantage, a massive feather in the cap. But if you're Notre Dame, when it starts impacting what you do on the field and it impacts the way that the college football playoff views you, I think that would be cause for maybe a little bit of change. Now, how many times does that have to happen? I don't know. I don't know if it's just a 1-year thing. Is it a Notre Dame keeps getting bit by not having a bye, every 2 years? I don't know. But I do think that in the playoff model, we're eventually going to see more and more of a case for Notre Dame to join the conference, or to join a conference, rather, whether it be the Big Ten or the ACC.
Yep. Briley says, missed my question from earlier. My bad, Briley. Only scrolls so far. Really doesn't scroll very far at all. So if you can, get it in towards the end, and then I'll get to it. Anyone else? So I didn't ask your question. A lot of them came through after I asked the last one by Craig. Come back tomorrow. We'll get to it then.
Beautiful. Good stuff. All right. Well, hey, we're hoping that rain holds off Wednesday, Nick. What are we looking at for kickball on Wednesday?
Yep. Some rain, but maybe not.
Maybe not. All right. Could be a little bit of a mud game for the good folks out there in the Germantown. Is it Germantown? Germantown Kickball League. All right. Well, we appreciate y'all being dialed in, man. Again, it is prediction week. Tomorrow, we will be predicting the records of schools like Tennessee, Nebraska, Miami. Also tomorrow, our Heisman Trophy predictions from finalists to winner. Then, of course, on Thursday, we will have our college football playoff and conference champion picks, as well as our national title pick. Appreciate y'all being dialed in, man, making the show what it is. College football, nothing but college football the way that you want to enjoy it. So thank you for locking in with us. Subscribe on your way out, man. For Nick Brake producing the show, myself, JD Piquel, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.